Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Sunday. It's Heretical Weekends number 22. Uh, and I'm glad Guy and Turtle took time out of their busy day watching the Packer game to show up. How are you guys doing?
Better than the Packers.
That's
Currently,
what you
anyway.
told me earlier, so I...
They literally just got scored on like it was nothing, like 2 seconds before you opened up this room. So I was ready to join the room.
they,
Yeah.
they got scored on like a drunk prom queen?
Yes. Yes.
He's like, yes. Yes, exactly. I often listen, well, I don't really listen back to previous shows, but I realize how animated I sound. I don't realize it until after I listen to myself. I was like, shit, dude, I sound like I'm on drugs. But anyway, folks, welcome to the show. We have several topics going on today because we couldn't just decide on just one, and Guy was too busy playing pickleball to worry about it. So, by the way, thank you for making me a part of that community because now I get all your pickleball updates.
You can drop out. I wanted to show you it's not just for white guys.
Did you add them to a group or what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not just for white. The one video he shows me, it's a bunch of white senior citizens, and they're like, "We like the exercise," and I'm just like, "Holy shit!" And I figured,
it's a little annoying that it often gets portrayed that way, but and old people can play it, but and maybe that's one of the things that kind of sets it apart from some other court sports and things like that. But it's a game.
Young man's game too.
Yeah, absolutely.
in other news, Guy is going to start an all-male Jenga tournament later on. So anyway, what we have going on this week, we're going to try to get to everything. We will finally get to a little breakdown of the evolution of humor, which is a topic that Turtle's been trying to get on the table for a while now, but it got sort of time got sort of sodomized by Matt Bell last week.
Well, and the time before that, I wasn't able to join because I had problems with Google. So.
Yeah, it was giving me problems today too. I'm inviting you guys. So, like, sometimes I can invite you guys by name, and sometimes I can't, and sometimes I can invite you by name in another way, but not the actual way it's telling me to. So,
Weird.
Yeah, it fucking sucks. So other things on the plate, if we get to them, did either of you see Floyd in Nadia's hangout talk to Arcane Logos and utterly annihilate him?
Yeah, I listened to a big chunk of that today, probably the majority of that hangout, or that that section of it.
An hour or so. Yeah, no one wants to listen to 8 hours in a hangout, but it gets really good, and Floyd is at the top of his game on this one. So Floyd, if you come in, and let's be honest, the 11 o'clock hour is still sleepy time for a lot of people, so the Pacific Coast time, 11 o'clock hour, so he may jump in an hour or so.
He's in the East Coast time, or...
Is he really?
Yeah, he's Eastern time. He's in, like, Pennsylvania or something like that.
Maybe he's still at church.
Now that I look at Floyd, he does look like he's from Pennsylvania.
He's got that Pennsylvania Dutch look.
Yeah, like he's kind of, I don't know why that just makes sense to me. Like he's a Quaker or something. What else I got going on? Skylar Fiction's been doing a great job. I don't have a real set topic for it, but the best I can come up with is Skylar Fiction versus every dumb theist on YouTube. And he kind of does what you do, Gabby, except he does it in a hangout. And I really don't know where he finds these people, but it's kind of fascinating. So, I hope that he had a couple of hangouts this past week, and they were entertaining but frustrating at the same time.
People don't do hangouts with me anymore. And I don't think that it's. I don't know. I don't think it's because of me or anything. And my schedule's gotten tighter over the last year or two. So.
All that pickleball.
That's another thing. Yeah, exactly.
No, I think that I think what it is Skylar recently. going on the Bible thumping wingnut Matt Slick circle jerk has been just a little bit of a higher profile.
Yeah.
Recently, just in general amongst everybody, and so it just kind of leads into more hangouts that way. As we were talking about before the show started, Josh Feurstein versus Starbucks, which is making some Facebook news. And if we have time, and I really want Fox to be in here if he can make it in here. He did a great post right before this show started regarding Trey Jadlow's sanctity of existence and a bunch of other terms that he breaks down. So I had entitled that yesterday night, Trey Jadlow's sanctity of existence and other weird things he says. Because he has all these terms that no one else uses, and he uses them like very uniquely, and a lot of equivocation there. So, but to kick things off, and this is going to be Turtle's baby. So I'm going to be wowed by your wisdom, Turtle, on this.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah. So this is a topic that I've been, as you mentioned, interested in for a bit now. And if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and start by playing the audio from that video that I shared with you. Should be about a minute, I think.
It is indeed a minute. All right. So Turtle's going to walk us through the evolution of humor. Listen carefully, because I'm sure this will be entertaining.
I could.
Let's hear you sing the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Cookie Monster.
You're not singing the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S. Cookie Monster is the letter of the alphabet. It goes Q, R, S,
D, U, Cookie Monster.
You're just teasing me. W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs.
Next time Cookie Monster.
Next time Cookie Monster can do it with you. I'm leaving.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks.
That was adorable.
It is definitely adorable, and the reason I bring that up is because it seems to me that humor is fairly unique in that there seems to be no real obvious reason for it from an evolutionary standpoint. Like you can think about pretty much anything that we enjoy, like as we were talking about earlier, Gav, Guy, and I like to watch the Packers play, and I would say that there's a fairly easy explanation from an evolutionary standpoint why people like sports, why people why people enjoy, for instance, pornography, or where these desires come from an evolutionary standpoint. But for instance, in that Sesame Street video that you played, what is the cause and effect from an evolutionary standpoint of why this little girl is laughing when she says Cookie Monster? There's kind of multiple things going on there. One is that she enjoys that she says Cookie Monster, and then secondly, she has this physical reaction to it, where she laughs. And the question I have is, why do we have that? What is the evolutionary benefit of laughing, of finding humor in things? And that's something that I've been thinking about for a while, and in particular recently, just because I think it's a difficult question to answer, and I don't think that there's at least an obvious answer. I think that there is an answer, and it kind of surprises me that creationists haven't jumped on to that, but it also doesn't surprise me because I don't think that creationists understand evolution, and so they don't understand why that would be hard to explain. And in fact, Heathen, you actually sent me a link to this one article. I'd like to read some of it, and I think it does a pretty good job of explaining some things, but I think it still leaves some questions that I don't think it deals with. So, and this is partially why I requested you play that Sesame Street video. But so this is an article from PsychCentral.com called "The Evolution of Humor." I think from 2008. I wasn't 100% sure on when it was put out, but the article's by Rick Noert, and it's based off of research by Alistair Clark, just to get all my sources in there. But basically, and I'm just going to be reading some sections from this article, but it states that humor occurs when the brain recognizes a pattern that surprises it, and that recognition of this sort is rewarded with an experience of the humorous response, an element of which is broadcast as laughter. And then skipping ahead, it says, it is not the content of the stimulus, but the patterns underlying it that provide the potential for sources of humor. For patterns to exist, it is necessary to have some form of content, but once the content exists, it is the level of the pattern at which the humor operates and for which it delivers its reward. Previous theories have only ever applied to a small portion of all instances of humor, many of them stipulating necessary content or social conditions in either conditions either in the humor itself or around the individual experiencing it. But that doesn't explain why an individual can laugh at something when no one else around them does, nor why two people can laugh at the same stimulus for different reasons. So to jump back to that Sesame Street video, essentially what this theory is saying is that there's a pattern set up that is broken, and it's the surprise of breaking that pattern is what makes something funny. So to this little girl, so she's going with the pattern of ABCs, and then she's breaking that pattern by saying Cookie Monsters, saying something that is surprising or unexpected. Now, this theory also says that you and I might find it funny for different reasons than the little girl. Like, we might not find it surprising that a child would say something like that, but we might find it amusing that the child is laughing at it or something like that. So I think that's a pretty good explanation of what is humor. Why, and I don't have the full article in front of me, but it talks about, like, a stand-up comedian would a lot of times would kind of, they point out patterns, and then in real life, and show us surprising elements of real life that maybe we didn't see beforehand, and so that surprises us, and then that's where we find the humor in it. Now the question of why do we have the physical response of laughter is a separate question that this article didn't address at all. But the most common explanation I've seen is that it's some form of play. Like, you do see something very similar to laughter in apes, and apparently even in rats. Like, there's it's inaudible to humans, I've read, but jumping back into this article here, now what I had read before doesn't address why, from an evolutionary standpoint, we would where humor comes from. It kind of only explains what humor is. The explanation that the article gave was an ability to recognize patterns instantly and unconsciously has proved a fundamental weapon in the cognitive arsenal of human beings. The humorous reward has encouraged the development of such facilities or faculties, leading to the unique perceptual and intellectual abilities of our species. So basically it's saying that this pattern recognition is advantageous to us, which I definitely agree with. My problem with that explanation is I don't understand why, with that explanation, we would like it necessarily. Couldn't we have the same effect of recognizing a change in a pattern and disliking it, or being afraid of it? Or you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. You know, we do see some pattern recognition in other species, and they do not react with laughter, or at least in whatever the reaction is. It's not the similar kind of biological, physical reaction that we have. You know, I walked into the house the other day, which I do every day, but on this occasion I had a Halloween mask on, and my cat got a mohawk, and his tail grew by double the diameter, and he was freaking out. You know, it wasn't laughter. He didn't find it amusing that I walked into the house with a goofy mask on. He was scared by that breakup in the pattern. Now my dog came over. He barked at me and checked, and he was cautious, but he wasn't scared, I don't think. I mean, he came up to me and smelled me and realized it was me. So his reaction was a little different. You know, I don't know. One person, a human, might be afraid when somebody walks into the house like that. Another person might laugh. So.
That actually goes to kind of where I've fallen on this, because I was thinking something very similar the other night. I was thinking about this, and it was late at night, and I was just having something to drink, and I was kind of standing in the kitchen. I was looking out the window, and I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, if I saw a man with a machete standing outside of my window, that would be a break in what I expect, but I wouldn't think it was funny. I would be afraid of that. It would cause a fear reaction, which got me to thinking, I almost wonder if humor is, to be more specific than that research paper was, isn't just any kind of break-in pattern, but almost, I wonder if it started as a reaction of relief, of recognizing a break in a pattern that is non-threatening. Like, so if you, like I said, if I saw somebody standing outside of my window in the middle of the night with a machete, that would cause a fear reaction in me. But if I then realize, oh, that's the my best friend, and he's playing a practical joke on me, that relief might cause me to laugh. So I almost wonder if the initial the beginning of humor started as kind of a relief of recognizing a change in a pattern, and then not having that fear reaction, or that fear being taken away by a sense of relief, that because the change is non-threatening.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, like I said, you know, even you know, of the two people that I said, you know, could possibly have two different reactions, the second person, if that person initially had a reaction of fear, if you take off the mask, you know, that can easily turn to humor, like, oh, ha 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 ha, it's you, you know, and like you, with your example of the machete person. And then there are degrees. So, like, you know, if you saw somebody at a distance walking through your backyard and they had a gun, depending on whether or not it looked like they were, you know, stalking your house or just passing through, if they had other behaviors that suggested that, you know, they really were like kind of unhinged or angry, if it was a person that, you know, you knew had reason or suspected they might have reason to be angry with you, that would be, you know, all of these different things kind of factor into the way we react, and the expression of our our emotional response to those things. So, you know, and I think you're right that probably it's that relief that developed into it, and it kind of became a social thing of these breaks in patterns that were not harmful, not threatening, that people came to enjoy. You know, there's almost like I suspect there's probably something biochemical that's released in our brain.
Yeah, I think so too.
That we kind of feed off of and enjoy when we see those kinds of things.
Well, I'm on a webpage for the Mayo Clinic, and there's several like benefits to laughter. Short-term benefits include the stimulation of organs, activate and relieve your stress response and soothe tension. Long-term effects, it can improve your immune system, relieve pain, increase personal satisfaction, and improve your mood, i.e. lessen your depression and anxiety. So even from a physical standpoint, there's a great many benefits to laughter.
Yeah, but I would have to think that comes like I don't know how to say it, but like I don't think that existed before laughter. I mean, not being
that's chicken
and
egg kind of thing. That there had to have been some initial kind of launch point that where all of those things might not have been present when the first humans experienced what became laughter and comedy kind of
I was just commenting on the I don't know if it was you, Gabby, that mentioned it about or someone said something about other physical benefits or something like that.
Yeah. So I said something about the possibility of like a chemical being released in our brain. There are a lot of things that we experience that are like that.
Yeah,
where
that's what I was getting at. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hey Floyd, what's up?
Hey guys.
welcome.
Let's find an entry. So yeah, I don't know what the purpose. I have not a clue on this one. I'm stuck with the bye Floyd. I'm stuck with the hi Floyd. I'm stuck in that unknown category. I don't have a clue, and if the experts don't have the answer, I doubt I'll come up with one in this hangout.
Well, I'm disappointed in you. I mostly wanted to bring it up because I think it's an interesting kind of question mark that I don't feel like there is a 100% for sure answer. And I haven't really heard other people talk about it either.
I like how in the beginning, though, you said, I'm surprised creationists haven't jumped on this, and, it's just something like considering they don't generally understand evolution. And in my head, I'm like, wow, you're kidding. They don't understand evolution. That's the headline for today. Yeah, I kind of read through that article and, at least perused it, and I'm kind of a big question mark on this one.
Yeah, I think for the most part they're right about it being humor is essentially a surprise at a pattern being broken.
Right.
But I think they're missing that there are pattern, like as exampled by Gavagai and myself, of when a pattern is broken, that there's a fear. You can have a fear response as well.
Right.
I think they would say in a case where, for instance, when a comedian is trying to tell a joke and you don't find it funny, that they would say that would be an example of, well, you aren't seeing the same pattern that the comedian is essentially breaking.
Right.
I think would be their explanation in that case.
And it kind of goes along with when you watch a comedy, there's many different types of comedy, but, like, for example, one of my very first girlfriends, who I will say, I won't say she wasn't smart. However, she her choice of comedy wasn't very. In other words, I'll give. She would rather see like an anvil fall on somebody's head than watch like a Steve Martin movie kind of thing, right? So there's that distinction in comedy where there's like quote unquote smart humor versus like slapstick per se.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, slapstick can be funny, but not because I don't know what's going to happen. The pattern break or recognition would be in the reaction of the person getting hit, you know, or how he flails about, or that kind of thing. But generally, for me, smart comedy is funnier.
Well, I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head there, because I mean, if you recognize the pattern, if you expect, you know, that somebody's going to get hit on the head with an anvil, it's not as funny as if you don't. If it comes out of nowhere in a way that, like, you can have a slapstick moment in a show like, let's say, Arrested Development, that is considered to be smarter or something like that, but because of the context of the situation, you're not expecting it, so it can be more surprising and funny in that situation.
Yeah, I agree.
When I first heard about the topic, that's kind of the direction I thought you were going to take with this, because I hadn't seen the article, but I thought you were going to talk about, you know, the change or the gradual development of humor over the course of human history, or, you know, shifting from you know, what humor used to be and whatever to what it is today. But that would be a hard one to track, because in some ways there's, you know, a lot that's similar, or even just exactly the same kind of stuff going on. You know, some of the things that have been funny for a long time are still funny. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I Love Lucy is still very funny, and I, at least to me,
that show will always be badass.
Yeah.
And if you disagree, you're just wrong.
Yeah. Well, but and then there are things in there that you're kind of like, ooh, boy, Ricky's, you know, male chauvinist, and oh, you know, kind of like the Honeymooners kind of thing, where there's like, you know, hinting at abuse and that kind of stuff, and it's just like, well, that's not funny anymore.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, but
you have to look at it like, see, I don't know, I get what you're saying, and I agree, because sometimes there's stuff you watch on that show or something, and you're like, that so wouldn't fly today, you know.
right.
But at the same time, it's like, I always take it in context. I always see it more like a cartoon.
Yeah. Like
cartoon humor, you know what I mean? Like, when they talk like that. I don't, you know, like, they'll often say something like, you know, have Ricky's temper and that kind of thing. And
yeah.
it's like To the Moon, Alice, and I see it more like, that's more like Bugs Bunny humor to me. But because, I mean, if anyone's watched The Honeymooners knows, that guy's wife is way in control of that relationship. Like, she's definitely the boss of that relationship. So anyway, I think Fox is here just because he's like, are we gonna talk about philosophy, or is there a philosophy aspect to this topic? Or? So, is there?
I can't find an angle.
Yeah,
no, I can't find an angle on this. But yeah, evolution of humour wouldn't explain exist Germans. So I think that one must be a skip to certain nations.
Well, but
interesting topic. I don't really.
That is another thing too. Is, I mean, it's obviously humor came about before humans split into different segments of the world, though, because I mean, Germans aside, it basically is across the board. You know, all different races have senses of humor. So it predates whenever humanity split into the different corners of the world.
Yeah. There's also it does explain one thing, why we all consider Arcane Logos a joke, because we can all laugh at him. Fuck Arcane Logos.
Yeah.
All right. So, are you? Is that pretty much the crux of your topic there, Turtle?
Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, I think we all heard everything, and we all went, I don't know, at the end. It's a great topic.
I think it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I've never even considered it, and I've had 2 weeks to think about it, and I'm right at square one. So
yeah, we need to stick Dave S on it, our kind of community psychology expert.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't know it, he has that smooth English accent. So it'll just sound right. All right, so we're gonna jump topics. If I can just find where my topic thingy was. What else did I have on the plate? Someone help me out. We can go Josh Feurstein.
You had something you wanted Fox to talk about. You had something you wanted Floyd to talk about.
That's true.
You had a list, and number 2 is Floyd's dismantling of Arcane logo. So that seems like.
I'll try to get back to my Google Plus page. I like to go and give a clap, an applause to Floyd.
Well done, Floyd.
You were my hero that day, Floyd. I gotta say. I was listening to it while I was at work, and I had an almost similar reaction to like watching a football game. Not the Packers today because they're losing, but I mean, if I was voting for the other team, I'd be like, yes, that was how I was with Floyd. I was like, so many things that I will never have the opportunity to talk to Arcane because I think I would just yell at him, but such a douchebag. But a lot of the things I've always wanted to say, you said. And so, what are your thoughts on that interaction?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to claim that you think the Bible is true or has some true stories, but when you're a presuppositionalist, I would say a pseudo-presuppositionalist that Arcane is, his claim is that not only does he believe the Bible is true, but it's the foundation of his epistemology. Okay, so you're going to reason from there. So if you find any flaws with the Bible, your whole foundation of epistemology collapses. So basically, you can't know anything, and that's the very thing presuppositionalists will say to us. So in bringing about problems with the Bible, I brought up the dating or the historicity of the Exodus. If you can't reconcile that, and you have a problem, if you have a problem with the Bible not being accurate, then according to Arcane, he can't know anything. So his worldview is reduced to absurdity once again.
A whole new way.
But Floyd, you don't realise that just because all of the experts say there was an exodus doesn't mean there wasn't an exodus according to rational theist Matt. So yeah, so take that.
Right, that's something interesting to bring up. And Matt Bell chimes in and accuses me of doing an invalid appeal to authority. So what would be a valid appeal to authority if you're not appealing to the top experts of the field? Matt Bell just throws crap out. I mean, he's just a bullshitter. And he says, he said I did bad because I stuttered at one point. Mm-hmm. So,
he's got a particular dislike for Floyd. I don't know. He actually bothers to at least comment on what you do at least. He completely ignores a lot of other people.
He's jealous because Floyd at least has hair.
Yeah. I find it ironic that a Christian is accusing someone else of appealing to, like, what'd you say it was?
Authority. Yeah, appeal to authority.
Appeal to authority. Coming from a Christian, I find that very ironic.
Yeah, so we shouldn't go to doctors. We shouldn't go to doctors if we're sick. We shouldn't appeal to scientists at all.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I had a comment exchange with a couple of Christians. It was the exact same conversation. We're talking about the prevailing, scientific, conclusions on top. I forgot what it was a few weeks ago, and they had the same argument. It's like, so because they're saying it, it's because they're saying it, it's all true, and right, and they can't possibly be wrong, or they were accusing me of like, well, we have this one or two guys, and they say otherwise, and I was like, look, guys, when you have a cavity, you don't go to your car mechanic. When you want to do your taxes, you don't go to the barista at the coffee shop. You turn to the experts.
Yeah, if we're not going to appeal to authority at all, well, don't appeal to the authority of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's
And Matt Bell makes appeals to authority left, right, and centre because, I mean, if you raise like issues around the Kalam, for instance, he will always accept William Lane Craig's authority over and above other philosophers who have PhDs who disagree with William Lane Craig. He'll say, "Oh well, I read William Lane Craig I've studied him intensely, and I find his arguments convincing, and therefore, for me, he is a valid authority."
Yeah.
But if someone
And
else does the same, that's a big problem.
And the other thing about Arcane is that he'll do that, but at the same time he'll even deny even biblical or Christian authority concerning other topics because he wants to make up his own bull crap. For example, there was a friend of mine, Maximus, that a long time when he was known as Epicurus, had made a video of a hangout he was in with Arcane, and then he re-entitled the thing Arcane Logos and the Raiders of the Lost Power Source, because for some reason, the Ark of the Covenant that's mentioned in the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah.
He basically thinks that God, and this is the popular view, that people believe that God was in the Ark of the Covenant, which is one of the reasons why during the presence it was very treasured and very high valuable, because basically God was with the people in the Ark. But then comes Arcane Logos, and he thinks that God wasn't in the Ark. He's like, that's really stupid. That's like degrading God, don't you think? And then he said, and then Max is like, okay, then what do you think it was? Like, I think it was some kind of high electric energy source of some kind. I mean, why do you think Pharaoh was going after Moses? I mean, just connect some dots here. It's got to be something very interesting. It's got to be some kind of high-powered energy source of some kind.
So Arcane things like it's impersonal, I don't know, radioactive rod or something.
Something like it, yeah. And whenever someone said, well, why do you? Well, and he even thinks that's what parted the Red Sea too. That same power source.
So it's not the power of God. It's magic.
Exactly. Not even magic. He thinks it's a material thing that doesn't need a superstitious attachment, and that's what's so contradicting. He's going to say God did this, but then at the same time, it's very irrational to put God into this. And my favorite part was whenever he said, why do you think the Pharaoh was going after Moses? He thinks the Pharaoh was going after Moses because he had the power source and Pharaoh wanted it. And then I think it was Ocean or someone was in there that just shouted out of nowhere, because Moses was stealing the dang slaves.
It's almost like an 18th century rationalist who believes the stories of the Bible, but believes there's like a naturalistic explanation for it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a theistic evolutionist, but I try to stay away from the naturalist perspective that some people like biologos indicate. However, this guy is going a completely, almost the same route, just a different passages or different history that he's trying to bring up, such as the Ark of the Covenant. What was powering it? What did Moses use to part the Red Sea?
Yeah, I mean, I would just stick with it's the power of God. It's supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, what's the problem with him trying to admit that if he's going to be a Christian? I mean, at least say God or something like that, or do Roy Montero in the beginning, God or not God.
Yeah, I've recently had a very long and prolonged conversation with a G+ user named Jay Wing, who is he's a fundamentalist, but his claim is that the Bible, he's an biblical inerrantist, and also believes that everything in the Bible is scientifically sound and whatever. So I've pointed out to him things like this, and he essentially says, well, it's fine with science, but this is a miracle, and so it's it just excusing anything that steps out from that. I pointed out to him about the this in the book of Joshua when the sun stops in the sky, and he's not a flat Earth geocentrist. He believes in the round Earth and kind of heliocentric model of our solar system. Well, I asked him, well, okay, what is the scientific model that would explain how the sun could stop in the sky, even from that's their perception of what's happening. How do you explain that with science? And he said, well, no, it's the Earth slowing down. And I said, well, okay, then you're changing the text, so the text is wrong if that's true. And he's, no, this you don't understand the Hebrew, and it could be that it's slowed down. And I said, well, okay, what are the forces that would have to be applied? There's how much force of torque that's going on with the Earth's rotation, and where was that force applied, and what would be the counter force of the oceans? They would all rush up onto the shore, even if it just slowed. I mean, think about a truck that was carrying a pool full of water on the back. Even if that truck slows, unless the pool sides are high enough, all that water is going to go rushing out over the edge of the pool, in the direction of wherever the truck was traveling.
And it'd have to start back up again too.
Yeah, exactly. So then it would go the other way, and just. There was no science behind it at all, was the point. and if you're okay with that, and you want to say, well, no, the Bible doesn't line up with science, but we understand that there's this deity who is all powerful and can do whatever he wants. Well, okay, you can say that, and I can't say anything against that, other than I don't see any evidence for it, but. You can't hold to a scientifically sound biblical narrative, and have all of these odd things going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, if you just wanted to avoid all these scientific problems, you can just simply just ignore it. That's what there's a branch of presuppositionalism called scripturalism. It's from the philosophy of Gordon Clark, sometimes called Clarkianism, and they simply believe, they believe the Bible is the foundation of their epistemology, and it's inerrant and so forth. So they believe now we can only have knowledge if it's divinely revealed. So everything in the Bible is true. So if you have scientific claims and so forth, well, that comes from fallible man, right? We can't trust that. We can't consider that knowledge. So we'll just ignore it, and that's how you can solve the Exodus problem. It's like, the Bible says the Exodus happened at this time and so forth, so that's what I'm going to believe. And if there's any, archaeological evidence that contradicts it or anything, I just won't entertain that. As simple as that.
So, so how much do you know about this deal? Because I want to ask a couple of questions
about the Exodus in archaeology, or Clarkian scripturalism?
Yeah, the scripturalism deal, because that's a new one. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, so in scripturalism, it's Gordon Clark is the theologian, philosopher who basically came up with it. So in their philosophy, we can know Jesus was resurrected from the grave because it's in the Bible, right? It was divinely revealed from an all-knowing creator. But we can't know that Obama is the president of the United States. That can be our opinion. We can think that can be our belief, but it's not considered knowledge because it's not divinely revealed.
All right. After hearing that much stupidity, I would like to ask the next question.
Like Van Til would say.
They said something about Scripture is the thing, but if it's from man and anything else, it's fallible. Do these people hold the same standard to people like theologians or anything when it comes to the reading of the text? Or what about themselves? Can they trust themselves if they are fallible men reading the Bible?
Right. I mean, don't you have to use your fallible eyes to read the Bible?
Or fallible brain understanding, where the Bible does say, the same Bible they're reading, that the heart is wicked and deceitful, kind of thing. So some people say they get this because they feel that's what the text says. Well, how do you know those feelings aren't deceiving you? But this is why we have things like exegetical papers, biblical hermeneutics. This is why we take careful consideration when actually looking at the text instead of just opening it up and saying, as long as your thing comes from the Word of God, your view, your interpretation comes from God, that is awesome. Anything else, you need to be skeptical about your very own existence.
Or something like Van Til will say, well, we were creating God's image. He gave us reliable cognitive capacities in our senses and so forth, and he wants us to know things. So therefore, when I look out in the world with my eyes, I can know that those things are real because God created that. And God created us to know things. So
Seitan Bruggencage should have gone with the Van Til approach then.
All right, I'm not
sure it does much better. It's a little more nuanced. It's not as like smash you over the head with a lot of nonsense approach, but it's still ultimately circular and question begging. And I can't see from what I've read that there's much there to recommend it. I think at least what Seitan does is a bit more honest. I mean, he is just there to just be a troll. He's just a troll, isn't he? He makes no bones about that, I don't think.
Yeah, and I've talked to several Calvinist presuppositionalists because apparently I found out that presuppositionalism is a reformed apologetic, and that Seitan, this is about as nice as I can say it, he doesn't know how to use his own apologetic method that he's claiming to use. He has no idea how to use it properly. At all. Like every presuppositionalists I've talked to besides Arcane Logos, because Arcane's an idiot, they say that Seitan does not know how to use the presuppositional method, and there are several people that use it more effectively and actually know how to properly use it compared to him. People like Bonson and James White, for example, and I can look and actually notice that where they're applying it, mainly in things like debates during cross-examination and question and answering. That's what the most effective that it's supposed to be used for. But the way Seitan does it, it's, let me debate Matt Dillahunty, let me write a script so I don't have to respond to Matt in the actual room, and then just say, God exists. That's the end of the story. It is absurd. It is not how you do apologetics. It is not how you do debates or engage with somebody either.
Yeah, but I think probably Arcane's flaw was he appealed to evidentialism, right? And he pointed to that documentary, and I never saw that documentary, but I looked at the cast of archaeologists on it. I noticed Israel Finkelstein was in it, and I said, well, I read his book, the Bible on Earth, and he denies that the Exodus happened. So, so at least one of the experts in that documentary doesn't even believe the Exodus happened. So appealing to that documentary, I don't think is too convincing. And I brought up, in the Hangout, I've seen shows on the History Channel where it'll be something on the Bible or Jesus or something, and they'll have real scholars, real experts, and they'll interview them, but the narrator of the show is saying something that the experts wouldn't even agree with. So you have the narrator make some claims, and then you switch to an expert who says something that is commonly considered true, and then switch right back, and you get the impression that everyone on the show is all on the same page, but that's actually not the case at all. So someone who actually saw the documentary said, a lot of the experts said, oh, well, we can't fit the Exodus within the dates that the Bible claims, but and they try to propose other dates. And I point out to Arcane, well, that could possibly be the case, but for Arcane, who's an inerrantist, that's not good enough. It has to be, the Bible has to be 100% accurate. So you can't appeal to a documentary that says, oh, well, it could have been the Hyksos, the dates could have been different, and so forth. No. If he's claiming this is the foundation of my epistemology, everything I reason from is from this book. Well, then you can't doubt a word that it says. And if you're going to point to a documentary with experts, and they're saying, well, it's not quite like the Bible says, or you have the case of Israel Finkelstein, who flat out denies the Exodus ever occurred. I think someone in Arcane's position is in big trouble.
Well, and that happens a lot. They will point to and grasp at, or I should say, I shouldn't cast this net too wide. Many of the fundamentalist Christians will say, well, look at these experts, these scientists. They agree with X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times when they're in these discussions, they'll point to intelligent design proponents. But the Christians, the fundamentalists, are taking a hard stance against any kind of evolution. Well, they're pointing to people who disagree with them on the fact of evolution, and the scientists, even the intelligent design proponents, have backed off this idea that the Earth is 6,000 years old, that species have not evolved, and we don't have common ancestry. All of those things they've yielded to, and they're holding to this one idea that there is some kind of design that can be seen within DNA, or whatever the natural processes, that there's some guiding hand behind it. Well, they want to say that these guys are in their camp and include them in this big tent, and it's similar to what G-Man does all the time. When in recent conversations where he's said, there are X number of Christians, then they outnumber the atheists, and he includes in those tabulations anybody that self-identifies as Christian. But then when you ask him about whether or not certain individuals are Christians, then he goes to a different level and does not include those Christians. So it's just kind of at your convenience, kind of doing a cherry picking and shopping list of the things that you want, or the people that you want to include in your camp, while they don't agree with, in a lot of cases, a majority of the things that you hold to try and help bolster your position.
I noticed that in that exchange between Floyd and Arcane, and this is the reason why I think presuppositionalists like Arcane don't ever really use any sort of evidentialism, is because when he's referring to the experts, and Floyd pointed out that Finkelstein guy, I noticed a big backpedal with Arcane. Suddenly it was like, oh well, there's experts too. Go check it out, and then Floyd goes right to it. Give him props for looking that up right away, and he goes, hey, there's this guy, and I actually read the guy's book, and Arcane really had nothing to say after that. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking to a guy that actually read the guy's book that disagrees with you.
Well, Arcane is incredibly lazy. He's intellectually very, very lazy. He doesn't do a great deal of work. And the reason why he adopts the particular brand of presuppositionalism that he does is because it doesn't require any work. You can sit there in a hangout or on a thread, and you can just troll away, and it's the easiest job in the world to be just a contrarian to what everybody says. And even if evidentialist apologetics requires a bit of work, and there's, if you want to go down scientific, philosophical. I mean, if you look at someone like true empiricism, for all his many faults, he at least tries to learn some veneer of scientific language and the concepts behind them to present the bullshit that he does. And some, there are plenty of people who will try the philosophical route. But Arcane is just lazy. He wants to be the guy who gets to tell everyone off for being retards and stupid, but he doesn't want to do any of the work that might remotely justify what he's saying. So when Floyd gets in a hangout with someone like Floyd, he's just going to call him on that kind of bullshit, and that's when he's going to just retreat into his shell and just spout the usual bullshit.
Good call on that, Floyd, where Arcane immediately tried to retreat back into Presup, and you just immediately said, yep, he's retreating back to Presup.
Yeah.
And he really had just really direct, and he really had nowhere to go after that,
And he doesn't even know what an internal critique is. he said, he said, by what standard, Floyd, are you doing internal critique by? I said, what standard? Your standard. That's what internal critique's all about. and he said that a couple of times. I said, no, I'm using your standard. And he was thinking, well, my standard is God exists, so you can't say you can't fight that, you can't argue that God doesn't exist, starting with God exists. No, I'm not doing that. I'm talking about the validity of the Bible. The Bible is not your God. Your God could exist all at once, but that doesn't necessarily mean all the claims in the Bible are true. He's actually committing idolatry, considering a book is his God. So it's not that it's all I need to do is just show internal contradictions within his worldview, and we can start by just okay, well, let's just look what the Bible says, and if there's any internal inconsistencies, then that's a defeater.
Part of the problem, and when Matt Dillahunty was debating Psi 10. Matt pointed out to Sai, he said, you seemed to be unable or unwilling to step outside of your worldview. And Sai 10 was like, well, of course. I imagine the reverse is true. You're correct, he doesn't understand what an internal critique is, but he won't accept that you can step into his worldview to critique it.
Yeah.
Just the process of it itself, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that too. Okay, well, if I'm not going to step outside my worldview, well, I'm not going to entertain a thing that the Bible says.
Exactly.
The Bible's just a bunch of fairy tales. I'm not going to give it any weight. So, anything you say that's in the Bible is irrelevant.
Yeah, well, it's so frustrating that he doesn't get that. I mean, you tried to, line out the equation for him. Like, look, if the Bible is true, and this is what the Bible says, and this is what the evidence is, then you end up in trouble over here. And he just refused, and he's doing all of these, gymnastics to try and squeeze out of it and wriggle away. And I don't know if he doesn't get it or if he sees the trouble that he's in and is just going through, cognitive dissonance ninjutsu skills or something. I don't know. But it'd be interesting to see how that runs in his head.
Yeah, and a lot of Christians, it was even the comments, even Matt Bell appealed to that. Eventually they get to a point saying, well, we can't know for sure, and the experts, they're fallible humans, so we're not going to put a lot of weight on that, and we'll just, because we're not absolutely 100% sure, we're just going to stick with the traditional view of what the Bible says. It's like, we can't know these things for sure. It happens thousands of years ago. What can we really know? It's like, we just can't know, so we're just going to stick with what the Bible says. Just leave it at that.
He reminds me a lot of that guy from that HBO documentary that says, if I see in the Bible 2 + 2 = 5, I'm not going to question it, but try to figure out.
It's just analogical language. That's all that is.
Yeah. And in fact,
analogical language.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that's what R.C. Sproul actually said, saying if there's anything anything that contradicts the Bible, then it's our interpretation. It's either we're incorrect or our interpretation of the Bible is wrong, but we're never going to doubt the Bible itself.
It's such a disturbing point of view. It really is. I mean,
you literally can't be wrong, because whenever you actually get them to the place where they have to admit there's a contradiction, they can just get out of it by saying that it's just us, our fallibility, and that God has an answer because God's super and awesome. And that's what Trey does.
Or they'll slip in that word, well, that's not the exegesis of it or something. Or you don't know the history of the people or this and that.
Yeah, well, that's the exegesis thing is G-Man and Veckel's go-to line.
You gotta say it right, Ron.
Yeah, exegesis.
Exegesis.
Yeah, and a lot of these theologians, when it comes to things like evolution and how old the Earth is, I guess they won't go as far as the flat, the flat Earth, but they just won't give their opinion on it. because they know they're opening up a huge can of worms there. So, as far as evolution and the age of the Earth, they simply they won't touch it. They'll avoid giving their opinion to it.
Or they'll tentatively accept it broadly, but be skeptical. And then the moment one slither of evidence emerges that they think goes against it, they'll be all over it and go, well, you see, look at this, And then it'll take. I mean, I think there's a good example with William Lane Craig. Special relativity has a big problem for William Lane Craig for his particular model of time. So he's an atheist, and there's traditional problems in the philosophy of time with special relativity, which is obviously a very well confirmed theory that brilliantly describes the universe at large scales. And there was an experiment in Italy where a group of scientists, apparently, people may remember this, they confirmed, or they seemed to confirm a subatomic particle that could travel faster than light, which relativity says is impossible. And William Lane Craig put a blog up on his website saying how wonderful this was, and and how he's always been a fan of Lorentz, which was a scientist which was against relativity, and how let's just sit and tight and hopefully special relativity will be overturned. And it turns out that it was actually a problem with the equipment that these scientists were using, that actually relativity holds up, and these particles that go faster than light don't exist. But it just shows how someone who can make big waves towards using physics in his arguments when it suits him. So you'll hear again Mark Bell will go on about Alexander Vilenkin's interpretation of the Bode-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which isn't an invalid appeal in of itself, but it's far from conclusive. But William Lane Craig just obviously makes a big deal out of certain aspects of science, and will not be so stupid as to go against very well established science like evolution. But you just know that they're just itching to get in there and if there's the slightest hint of doubt that might overturn a kind of a tricky part of science, they'll jump all over it. And I think it just shows how disingenuous they are, really. The smarter ones know that it's stupid picking a fight against evolution, but
they'll even criticize science. Right? William Lane Craig even said it. That he described it as the shifting sands of science, because it's like, see how unsure science is. It's not static. It's always changing and so forth. But the Bible's static. It doesn't change. But apparently there's an old covenant and a new covenant, and new interpretations and new denominations have sprung up over the history of time and so forth. Yet the Bible doesn't change.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Bart Ehrman, I mean, the New Testament has changed so much over the course of time with scribes making mistakes when they copy it. There's more differences in the versions of the books of the New Testament than there are words in the New Testament. So yeah. Then
you'll have philosophically trained theologians and apologists. They'll claim to be scientific anti-realists, where anything that science comes up with, they're not necessarily consider real. It could be useful, could be helpful, but they're science anti-realists. So, again, they're just going to, I guess, dip their hand in the cookie jar, but not recognize exactly, the recipe of how those cookies came about.
The one thing I did notice about, and you're talking Arcane, and I guess other theists too here on YouTube, is when we're talking about the vast majority of experts, they have this tendency to latch onto like these fringe guys that are in the opposition. You know what I mean? Like, but they claim it as the way they verbalize it. They're experts, almost as if they're on the same footing. Like you'll say vast majority, right? So vast majority is what, like 80, 90%, rough, 70, 90%, kind of thing. And they go, well, I have experts too that say the opposite, and it's never the same. It's always like these fringe guys with these very kind of these minute numbers.
I think that's okay, because sometimes you have, like, the mainstream scholarship just kind of sticks with kind of like the same notions and isn't willing to explore any further. So I have no problem with the fringe, but their arguments have to be valid and have some evidence behind it. There was a claim, like, I kind of lean towards Christ mysticism, and there's a lot of bad arguments for Christ mysticism. There's one guy that kind of claimed that Christianity was an invention of the Roman Empire, for example, and there was no Jesus, and I think that's just simply a bad argument. It's just totally false. Christianity definitely stemmed before it became popular in the Roman Empire. And there's bad comparisons of Jesus to other characters about being crucified and stuff like that, and it's just a lot of it's just not true. Like Krishna being crucified, for example. No, he wasn't. He actually died, I think, with an arrow being he was hitting an arrow on his heel, I think, or something like that.
The problem that I have is not that they defer to these fringe guys, it's that they don't go any further in examining what they're actually saying in detail.
Well, they reach out to those fringe guys because they think that it lines up with their preconceived ideas of what reality is.
That's what I'm saying. They don't actually go into what they're actually saying, at least into, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the opposite approach, which lines up with my position, and then I'm done.
Yeah. Well, quite a few times, I like when I'm arguing with Seamus or other people, it turns into a scholars war. It's like, oh, well, my scholars say this. Oh, yeah, well, my scholars say that. So it's like, my scholars can beat up your scholars, sort of thing. And
I'd like to see that.
And in that point, at that point, well, yeah, you really have to dig deep and look at the arguments. But all of us here are laymen. None of us are PhDs, experts in their field. But, we do rely a lot on scholars and the experts. How do I know what I know? Well, I read other people's books. I didn't travel to the Middle East. I didn't dig up the Dead Sea Scrolls. I don't know Koine Greek and Hebrew, things like that.
And even the experts have to rely on past experts. We build on basis of other people's knowledge to get to where we are. So.
Right, but I have no trouble with fringe scholars, but again, they have to present their work. It's just like at one period of time, there was a solid state, steady state theory of the universe, and that was superseded by an expanding universe. So if you just stuck with what traditional science says at the time, you say, oh, no, we can't have that, or same way with the flat Earth or with geocentrism. How do you explain the orbit of the other planets? And they say, oh, well, if the Earth doesn't move, then the wandering planets do these loop-to-loops. That's they have to explain it based on what they currently believe is true. But then you should always be willing to question. Well, do I currently what currently believe is true? Is that actually true? When you have new evidence that kind of suggests otherwise, well, I guess you really have to start looking at your previous assumptions.
It's like the creationists, they'll be putting down evolution, saying, well, it doesn't work, it's false, and they'll try to tell you why and all this, but there's no real scientific evidence that is against evolution. You say, well, what creation scientists and what laboratories being funded by who are doing important research and papers and getting them peer-reviewed that either say creationism or intelligent design is correct and evolution is wrong? I don't know of any. But then you can on the flip side, you can go, well, here's university here. Here's they're using principles of evolution or based on evolution. They're doing all these studies. They're coming up with new medicines. They're making all these discoveries. Here's what's really happening. What you got, they got nothing.
And a lot of these guys, when they argue evolution, they always retreat to abiogenesis and always go down to the DNA level, to the the molecular, biological level, because that's where things get very complex, and we still have a lot of unknowns in that area, and it comes down, the irreversible complexity. When you look at the complexity of a single cell, it's like, well, how did it come about? And it kind of forces us to explain it.
Irreducible, not irreversible.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, irreducible. You hear people like Nephilim Free, for example. I wouldn't debate him on evolution because he simply has read more and has more apologetics behind him than I do in the subject. A few times I checked some of his sources and so forth. He'll appeal to some source he'll read, and it sounds like he's being very impressive and so forth, and you find out that either quote mined it, taking out context, or there are previous papers since then that pretty much debunk it. I remember one time he said, I forget, it was something about chimpanzees. He was saying, "Oh, it's not true that our DNA is all like chimpanzees," and here's a study that says it's only, I forget, like 90% or something. And I looked it up, and there's studies since then which claimed it was even higher than that. And of course he didn't bring that up. Either he doesn't know about it or just simply ignored it. But again, I don't. That's a field I don't spend a lot of time researching. So, like I would not debate him in that because I just simply don't have the expertise in it to do that.
Yeah, he gets into the technical language, some of which I'm sure he has right, or can at least talk about it in a way that's close to right, close enough that I can't distinguish as a layperson. But someone like Sam the Scientist or Fiona, they've got the expertise and know enough about the language, and I've heard them talk about the things he's talking about and even engage with him, and he's either skewing things in those cases or just has his facts plain out wrong, and so it's. But yeah, as a layperson, I don't know enough to pinpoint where those things are. So
yeah, he might know just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say, actually.
Yeah,
just enough to sound smart, and
Yeah, I mean, you could go to a doctor or somebody that has gone to medical school, but doesn't have a license to practice, and has been maybe kicked out of medical school for malpractice and things. They might be telling you things that sound really impressive, like they really know their stuff because they have that kind of esoteric language and terminology for things. I wouldn't know, but that's why I'm going to go to the people that have credentials and who have been published and their work has been reviewed and criticized by other people and has passed that test within academia. So yeah, I'm not going to rely on this bozo guy on the YouTubes for my information.
Like when True Empiricism made that video like last month, and within like a week, Scientist Sam just completely dismantled everything that he said, like step by step. And you don't have to wait too long for someone like Scientist Sam to step in and be like, here, let me correct that for you.
Yeah. So if you want to sound smart, just learn a few buzzwords and then you can fool people and hope no real experts are in the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be the point, though, right? To fool people, because I mean, if you're actually trying to have a discussion and have people change their mind, you want to speak in terms that they understand, right? So I mean, if you're intentionally using terms that people don't understand, like if you're in a discussion with somebody, you generally try and use something that you know they will understand to communicate your ideas with them, rather than speaking in terms that you know they won't.
Right. Yeah. Breaking it down into language that they can consume and understand. Well, and then the other thing that always is a red flag for me is these guys who do that, and then they also just kind of gloss over any of the data, any of the numbers. They don't have, you know, numeric any kind of numeric calculations or anything like that to back up what they're saying, and you know, if they do put any kind of graphic up with charts or data or anything like that, they don't put it up long enough for you to actually look at it, what it is. They don't explain it. When you see real scientists who know their stuff and have, you know, based it on, you know, hard data, they will put up that and they will go through it and break it down piece by piece because they're proud of what they've done. They are, you know, they're excited about the data. That's what it's based on. They're not glossing over it because they think it's above your head. They want you to understand it. They want to take the time to go through it and break it down.
Well, I think that, I mean, Matt Bell is a good example of somebody who just throws things at you and then he's not trying to convince you. He's just trying to throw things at you. You know,
right. It's a barrage of terms and yeah.
Yeah, and you don't know about this? Well, then you don't know.
Yeah. Then you should be quiet and just accept what I'm telling you.
Exactly.
You know, one way you can fool people is, you use fancy words and use terminology that sounds really wise, but you're really saying nothing. So, you know, people will think, boy, I don't understand a word that guy said. He must be really smart. You know,
there was a hangout one time, and I forget who the person was, but they're talking about, they know all this stuff about DNA and base pairs and on and on and on and on and on. And then I think it was Sharp. She's Sharp. She said, well, what about androgynous retroviruses? You know, proving, you know, common ancestry, or, you know, where you could use those to go to see what animals were related to each other, and they went, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just dig a little deep. You know, you look under the covers, and you see it's a bunch of nonsense. There's a good book I recommend. It's by philosopher Stephen Law called "Believing Bullshit," and he talks about something called pseudo profundery. Hopefully I'm saying it right, but basically, yeah, you're saying a bunch of nonsense just to fool people. So you'll say things like everything is nothing. Like you'll say something kind of contradictory, and you say everything is nothing, nothing is everything, and people say, whoa, wow, let me think about that, because it's contradictory, right? So. So it says, well, it's obviously contradictory, but there must be some deeper meaning in it. So let me think about that. So this is like, Deepak Chopra sort of stuff. And then they'll say very obvious things like, we've all been children once, Oh, well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, right. That's true.
I was a child once.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that movie Mystery Men with Ben Stiller?
Yes.
You remember the character, the Sphinx?
Yes.
Based on a comic book, and so during the movie, he's supposed to be like the wise mentor, and he would say stuff like, "You must learn to control your anger, or your anger will control you." And then after a while, Benson just got mad, and he goes, "You just keep saying things in reverse, like they don't even mean anything."
Don't you find these things a little formulaic? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great scene, but it's kind of.
If you want to go forward, you have to go backward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, stuff like that. And you say, oh, he must be very wise. I posted a website on the side chat called Wisdom of Chopra, and you just click on it, and it gives you random quotes from a fictional Deepak Chopra. So let's take buzzwords. So, I want to announce is the future is mirrored in infinite boundaries.
I think I saw a whole hangout dedicated just to that. It was
I clicked on it. Consciousness is inherent in the doors of action. Yeah. Non-judgment unfolds in existential creativity.
It's funny. when I saw him debate on that debate with Sam Harris and Sherman, did you guys see that a while back?
I think I might have seen it.
I've seen him debate somebody, but I don't remember who.
It was Deepak Chopra and some chick.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most politically correct way possible. And,
I think I saw the beginning of that, but I didn't watch it in its entirety.
It gets better as it goes along, actually, because they start referring to what he's saying as woo-woo, and he gets like really butthurt over the whole thing. And I remember at one point Sam Harris is like, "You can keep repeating the same thing over and over again, louder and louder, and it doesn't make it true, Deepak." Like everyone just clapping and shit. It's pretty funny. So
there was. Can I give an example? I had a perfect example of this actually this morning in a comment thread. This guy was talking about supposed miracles that he uses to kind of bolster his faith, or that he's witnessed or experienced, and he was talking about this demon, and he was saying that he knew that this woman was demon possessed because a voice came from her that couldn't have been human, and blah blah blah. Well, so I'm asking him questions. I said, well, was it the woman's vocal cords that produced this voice? Was it whatever? And he kept telling me, well, you have to see with spiritual eyes. You have to see with spiritual eyes. And I was like, okay. So if somebody, I asked him, I said, do you believe in Bigfoot? And he said, no, I don't believe in Bigfoot. I said, well, what if somebody told you, they were in the forest and they heard a sound that had to be a Bigfoot sound because it couldn't have been caused by a human and it couldn't have been caused by some other forest animal, would that be compelling? And he said, no. And I said, well, what if they told you that you have to see with magic forest eyes? And perceive the story in that light, because then you will understand how Bigfoot is real. That those are not compelling things, and we shouldn't believe them. It's just somebody says it's the equivalent of saying play pretend.
Yeah, there was a video that the Amazing Atheist put up where he commented on some guy saying, "I have scientific I have scientific proof that God exists, or via the scientific method, I can demonstrate that God exists." And he says, "Step one, believe that God exists, and that's what deep in your heart." You know what I mean, like that kind of thing. and then that's basically kind of what you're saying. It's like, well, you believe this other belief through magic eyes, and then it's just I don't know where they come up with this shit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, isn't that what Kirk Cameron said once? That his scientific proof, along with Ray Comfort, that they have scientific proof that God exists, and and they go through all
that thing on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they go through the typical lame arguments.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny that he's like this. First of all, he called it the scientific method. Like, it's via the scientific method, and then it's just, well, believe it first, and then and then it'll be true. Then you'll know it. So, well, anyway, we're at the hour-and-a-half mark, so I'm going to end the show unless someone else has something phenomenal they want to say. Now, Heavy, it was nice to see you again. Nice that you got off the computer. We miss you. Now, I just had one question before I shut this down. Is your name derived from your profession?
No.
Okay.
I just love the name.
Okay.
There's a little more to it, but I ain't going there.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Because you have like the trucker hat and the beard, and I totally can imagine you like on a construction site with like a pickup or like a dirt truck. You know what I mean? Like.
Actually, this is a bear flag.
Oh, okay. Oh, I saw. Oh. Now, when you say bear, I know what that means.
Wolf and all that stuff.
What was that?
Wolf.
We'll just
leather and hair and stuff and things. Anyway.
That's awesome. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Bye.